What's up, team? Today is another day. It's a Wednesday. I'm going to read another chapter from my book, We Can Do This, Overcoming the Political Divide and Creating the World We Want to Live in, which is all about integrating logic and spirituality and science and politics and just common sense stuff, like how humans work, psychology, all of that good stuff, into a coherent view of culture and society and a path forward. So today's chapter is called Healthy. The idea is that what I'm saying is that we all want at a super high level for a society that lets people be healthy, happy, prosperous, and safe. And so, of course, we need to look at what does it actually mean to create a society, like what is health? We need to look at what is happiness, what is health, what are all of these different elements. Sorry, my team is calling. And so that we can figure out, like, well, we can't create a political system that creates healthy people unless we understand what creates healthy people, right? So we need to have that conversation first. So that's what that's about. So let's get to it. Chapter is called Healthy, and it starts on page 195 in this manuscript, 197. It looks like I've managed to cut out a few things that we've cut out a couple pages, so the page numbers are a little screwed from the print edition, but that's okay. All right, here we go. Healthy. I am not a doctor. I don't play one on TV, and you should not take medical advice or any other type of advice for that sake from me. Refer to the legal disclaimer at the start of this book. Maybe I should do my I forgot to do my diction exercises before we do this. Betty Butter had a batter bitter whatever. Here. Let me see if I can pull them up. Do you guys know these things? It's super fun. They're really fun. Get the diction going. Here. Hang on. Here we go. My former teammate made the grab these for me. Betty Butter bought some butter, but she said, this butter's bitter. If I put it in my batter, it will make my batter bitter. So she bought some better butter, better than the bitter butter, and she put it in her batter, and it made her batter better. Red leather, yellow leather, lime leather, lavender leather. Good blood, bad blood, good blood, bad blood. Unique New York. All right. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. A peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked. If Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, where's the peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked? All right, here we go. And with that, now you have that too, guys. All right, with that out of the way, let's start with this important question. What creates disease and what creates health? A popular phrase is that disease comes from being in a state of dis-ease. I believe that's true. The body is naturally healthy, but due to the stress of living, over time it gradually breaks down. How fast it breaks down depends a lot on what we do with it. Stress is by far the greatest cause of disease, and stress is just another word for fear. Our minds have incredible power to make us sick or healthy. When you live in a state of fear, your body will activate the sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight response. When in fight or flight, your body is not doing the processing necessary to take care of itself. It needs rest and activation of the parasympathetic nervous system to heal and recover, also known as rest and digest. Your body also needs healthy stress, exercise, cold showers, deep breathing. Your body gets stronger by healthy stress. Another source of dis-ease comes from our environment, the food we eat, the things we drink, the air we breathe, chemicals from drugs, whether prescription, over-the-counter, or recreational, chemicals that get in contact with our skin, EMF, and other sources of radiation. All of it can either contribute to healing or to disease. Conventional Western medicine, like drugs and surgery, cannot heal. At best, they can mask symptoms, but the underlying disease is still there. It's probably still getting worse, and eventually it's going to show up some other way. My belief is that the symptoms show up wherever the body happens to be weakest, but it has little to do with the underlying cause. Western medicine is so focused on symptoms, they'll treat each symptom individually and avoid looking at the whole person. Dr. Joe Dispenza has, through his work, demonstrated the likelihood that disease starts in the quantum field around us before it manifests as disease in the physical body. Work the field and the disease doesn't happen. That's a very interesting idea, though obviously a threat to the medical cartel. My mom had a friend, Pellegel, who was a surgeon specialized in mastectomies. He told me how he'd noticed that all his patients had the same psychological pattern, a resentment towards their own femininity as well as a resentment towards men. This made him change careers from surgeon to psychotherapist so he could help the women before the breast cancer manifested, which he did until his passing. He taught me that there's always a psychological and spiritual component to disease, and if we're not addressing this, we're just skirting around the issue. Remember how the medical industry, our media, and we as a society never take the placebo effect seriously, even though it is the most documented effect in all of medical science. It's demonstrable proof that the mind can create or heal disease. Why aren't we all in on harnessing it? The fact that we're not is borderline criminal, and yet another proof of how the emperor's new clothes is everywhere. Elements to health. If you want health, you must address the source of disease. Here's a list of elements that are critical for health. I'm not claiming it to be exhaustive, but it's a good start. 1. Question all the beliefs that create fear and stress in you. 2. Remove toxins from your environment as much as possible. 3. Stop putting harmful substances in or on your body. 4. Consume healing natural foods and supplements to support your body in healing and detoxing. 5. Move and exercise daily. 6. Breathe deeply and calmly. Mix up your breathing patterns. 7. Get plenty of sleep, rest, and recovery. 8. Find purpose and meaning in life. And 9. Cultivate a healthy social life. If you do these, your body will naturally heal. And none of these require a doctor or quote-unquote health insurance. Healthcare. The health quote-unquote care system is a complete misnomer. It's not about health and it's not about care. All incentives are aligned towards getting people sick, ideally with chronic illnesses, so the system can keep you just alive enough. So the system can keep you just alive enough for them to suck as much money out of you as possible for as long as possible. Getting kids sick with diabetes and other metabolic diseases is perfect. Everybody profits when you're sick. Nobody profits when you're healthy, and it shows in the outcomes. The U.S. medical industry currently makes $4.5 trillion per year, or 18 to 20% of the total U.S. GDP. And yet, the U.S. population is sicker than ever and sicker than most other developed countries. Makes you think, huh? The purpose of a system is what it does. The incentives are all screwed up. If they mandate a vaccine that happens to make you sick, they profit and you suffer. If they give you a drug that has quote unquote side effects, they profit and you suffer. As we talked about before, side effects is another sleight of hand. They're just effects they don't want you to pay attention to. They're listed on the insert. It's a good idea to read them and to believe them. Note how most medical diagnoses are just descriptions of symptoms. Restless leg syndrome, chronic fatigue syndrome, irritable bowel syndrome, mast cell activation, migraine, tinnitus, on and on and on. They just describe symptoms because they don't know why they happen. Slow clap. They have no real understanding of the root causes or how to cure them. They just know to name and mask symptoms. And we've been brainwashed to think that this is somehow health care. What it really is sick leeching. They do not have your best interests at heart, and they do not know what really causes disease or healing. All you can trust them to do is make you sick and make money off of you. The purpose of a system is what it does. Death by medicine. Medicine is the third leading cause of death in the US. It's called iatrogenesis, death by medicine, and it's way more prevalent than you think. You cannot trust the healthcare industry with something as important as your health. In his book, Deadly Medicines and Organized Crime, How Big Pharma Has Corrupted Healthcare, Peter C. Gutsche documents extensively the depth of the corruption in the medical industry. From clinical trials to medical journals, to doctors, regulatory capture, to intimidation, threats, and violence, he lays out the rot in the medical racket. It's sickening, literally. It makes you want to throw up reading it, and and it makes you and me sicker and them more profits. Peter Gurtschy, by the way, is a perfect example of the Peter Gurtschy, by the way, is a perfect example of the Gell-Mann amnesia effect. He's written a whole book about the fraud in the medical industry, and then when the media writes about Trump, he believes they're telling him the truth. Go read the comments to his ex-posts where people are schooling him on this. They're a hoot. Psychiatric drugs. Psychiatry deserves a special mention. A friend of mine was very serious as a kid, so his parents took him to the doctor. A friend of mine was very anxious as a kid, so his parents took him to the doctor and he was prescribed anti-anxiety medication. No discussion of how maybe his parents and the dysfunction in his family had contributed to his anxiety. No, it couldn't possibly have anything. It couldn't possibly have anything to do with us parents. It's the kids that's broken. It's the kid that's broken. Drug the kid. It's a travesty. If kids are broken, it's because we grown-ups broke them with psychology, malnutrition, toxins, energy, vaccines, something. But we did this, and we must own it. Another friend told me he'd been a guinea pig for Western civilization's pharmaceutical companies. It breaks my heart. Kids don't need drugs. They need love and healthy boundaries. Tony Robbins has demonstrated many times that he can cure people from depression at his events. Depression, anxiety, and whatever other mental disorders people suffer from are an unconscious pattern that they play because it meets an unconscious need. Break the pattern and the behavior stops. End of story. This is not to minimize the pain that people are in, but the treatment they're getting is making it worse, not better. I want to see them be free and healthy. I will never buy into the idea that there's some weird chemical deficiency in the brain and therefore we need to take a drug to correct it. If that were true, why is there an explosion in people on psychiatric drugs all of a sudden? And why do people not seem to get truly well on these drugs? I think it's a lie fabricated to profit off of people's suffering and silence anyone who speaks up about the grift. And yes, it pisses me off. I believe your body knows how to produce all the chemicals it needs if given the right conditions. The medical scientists working with Dr. Joe Dispenza have pointed towards this. You don't need any pharmaceuticals in your body. Reject them all. Own your health. This is my unprofessional opinion and I'm sticking to it. Your body as a barrel. I heard Dr. Thomas Rao from Biomedicine International I heard Dr. Thomas Rao from Biomedicine International, an actual medical doctor, explain disease with a metaphor that makes a ton of sense to me. Think of your body like a barrel filling up with toxic sludge as you slowly poison yourself with processed foods, fearful thoughts, toxic metals like mercury, lead, aluminum, toxic metals like mercury, lead, aluminum, and others, fluoridated water, EMF, chemicals and deodorants, sunscreen. Compound that by not breathing and moving enough for your lymphatic and other circulatory systems to clean your body of toxins, and not giving your liver and kidneys and other organs enough of a rest to do their work of cleaning up after you. Eventually, the barrel fills up and starts overflowing. The overflow manifests as some symptom. What it really is just the weakest, most exposed system in your body that breaks down. But instead of identifying the pervasive state of disease in your body, the doctors will zoom all in on the symptom, give it a label to sound like they know what they're talking about, and prescribe a drug or surgical procedure to mask the symptom. Let me see here. Can I add a... It's going to add a comment here. All right. Okay. And it might alleviate the symptom for a while, but then the drug or the procedure has quote unquote side effects. And eventually the toxic sludge that's still slowly trickling into the barrel, that is our metaphor for your body, will start overflowing again, causing another symptom to pop up. And then they'll treat that. More side effects, more toxic sludge, more symptoms, more drugs and surgeries, and on it goes. Pain is just another symptom. It's a signal that something's not right. By prescribing OxyContin or other pain meds, you're just masking the symptom. This whole symptom treatment madness is like taping over the indicator in your car dashboard that says you need to change the oil. It doesn't solve the problem, it only hides it. And out of sight, the problem only grows bigger. How do we not see this? It's common sense. Fever too. Fever is healthy. It's the body's way of clearing out an infection. By taking a drug to lower your temperature, you're interfering with the natural healing process. As with most things in life, health is simple, but not easy. As with most things in life, health is simple, but not easy. And again, you don't need the government, doctors, or health insurance to be healthy. Physical trauma. The one thing that Western medicine is good for is physical trauma. If I'm in a car crash and my skull is cracked open, I'd want a great surgeon to do what they can to put it back together. Although, I will say that so far, every single encounter I've had with doctors and nurses, even for things like a broken bone in my ankle, or stitches after almost chopping off the tip of one of my fingers, or being in a mountain bike crash, they've been practically useless. That might just be me and my bad luck, or it might be an indication of something broader. Maybe I'm just being naive thinking they'd be helpful in the case of a car crash. I personally don't have health insurance, and I'm grateful that the US doesn't force me to fund a fraudulent health care system through my taxes or the individual mandate like Obama tried to do. I only wish the government would get out of the business of healthcare entirely. I'd love to be able to buy a health insurance that only covers things like car crashes and falls and things like that. Let me just do that over. I'd love to be able to buy a health insurance that only covers things like car crashes and falls, but in New York State where I live, you're not allowed to do that unless you also buy a regular health insurance, which I refuse to get because I don't want to subsidize the fraud. But our legislators are obviously not working for us people. I'm a big believer in free markets so long as they're actually free and effective. The bottom line is this: your health is entirely within your power to influence, though not control. What you do to improve your health is your business. How your body responds is God's business. That's as good as it's ever going to get. COVID. We need to talk about COVID. Yes, I know. We all want to put it behind us, but it showed us so much about how the medical industry operates. COVID red-pilled a lot of people, especially health-conscious people. So many of the policies simply didn't make any sense if you trusted your own eyes, ears, and thinking ability. By the time COVID rolled around, I'd already done my deep dive into how the media operates and developed a healthy skepticism of the government. I'm not a quote-unquote public health expert, but I do know a thing or two about problem solving and health. If you came into this with nothing but critical thinking skills and basic understanding of viruses and statistics, how would you approach the situation? Well, you'd actively engage doctors to experiment with treatments and set up central global databases for doctors to share their findings in real time. Instead, they try to prevent doctors from prescribing well-known drugs like ivermectin that had been used safely for decades. Why would you do that if you wanted to save lives? You'd share all the data, properly stratified by anything that might be meaningful, so all doctors and lay people could do analysis and identify trends. You'd notice early on that COVID mostly killed very old people and people with comorbidities, and focus the vast majority of your effort on them. Everyone else can live normal lives. They'll be fine. You'd be super clear about what you're tracking. For example, infection fatality rate is way more critical than case fatality rate because case fatality rate only counts the number of known recorded cases. But many people got infected with no symptoms, or they stayed home and never told anyone, so our case numbers were way underreported. How do you find the number of infections then? Well, you could conduct random antibody samplings. This not only lets you assess the critical IFR, infection fatality rate, it also tells us how fast we might be able to get to critical herd immunity. By April 2020, 20% of New Yorkers already had antibodies. 20%. April 2020. And after May of 2020, I never saw another randomized antibody study. Why not? Right? That's the big question. Why did they stop doing that? It's probably one of the most useful things that you could do, but not if the purpose is to scare everybody and lock everybody up and test their compliance with totalitarian control and transfer trillions of dollars in wealth from Main Street to Wall Street, as they say. All right. What else would you do? Well, since it's Since it was clear that vitamin D and good health was an important factor, you'd encourage people to get outside and stay active. You'd keep the gyms open and, if anything, close the liquor stores. Alcohol makes you more likely to get sick. You definitely not require people who already had antibodies to take the quote-unquote vaccine. None of the things on this list require quote-unquote experts or quote-unquote scientists or quote-unquote doctors to figure out. It's simple logic. This is why many right-wingers don't trust experts. They're often blinded by what they know or by their agenda, trotted out to lie to our faces. Let me just rewrite that a little bit. They're often blinded by what they know or by their agenda, or simply trotted out to lie to our faces. And this is how the system works. The lie is so big that most people simply won't believe it. We're taught to trust experts and authorities to believe that this is all much too complicated for your feeble little brain to figure out. And the corruption is spread across so many institutions, from government to media to corporations to universities to NGOs. It's wild. And while the proof is all out there, it's so overwhelming and confusing that most people just give up and ignore it. Vaccines. I'm still trying to figure out what the end game was with the COVID vaccines. If you had the best interest of the people in mind, you'd never, ever mandate a completely new and untested drug built on a new and untested mRNA platform. Ever. Remember, we don't have any long-term safety studies because it's new. And now we never will either, because after the trial concluded, they vaccinated the control group. They vaccinated the control group. That might seem minor, even like the compassionate thing to do. Hey, we know it works, we should give it to everyone. But it's borderline criminal, because without a control group, we have no way to track long-term consequences with the rigor of a trial. We will never know for sure what the long-term effects are. You think this is an accident? I don't. The purpose of a system is what it does. By the way, Pfizer is on the books as having paid the largest healthcare fraud settlement in history at $2.3 billion. Yeah, let's totally trust that company with a new untested product forced on billions of people. Did you know that in the clinical trial for the Pfizer vaccine, total mortality was actually higher in the vaccinated group than in the control group? It's true, most people don't know this. The vaccinated group saw 21 deaths. The vaccinated group saw 21 deaths versus 17 in the placebo group. But some of the vaccine deaths were conveniently ignored because they were not considered related to vaccination. Quote, because they were not, quote, considered related to vaccination, end of quote. In other words, 24% more deaths in the vaccinated group than in the control group. They may be correct that they were unrelated, but given that this was a brand new platform with no long-term safety studies, how could they know for sure? Was the public informed? And how could they go through with the mandates given this data? I'm going to have to go all caps here. We know for a fact that more people died with the vaccine than without it. Died. We can argue about why they died, but it's a fact that they did. It's right there in Pfizer's own data. And yet we still pushed, bribed, coerced, and yet we still pushed, bribed, coerced, and in many cases forced people to take this shot. How is this not a huge scandal that dogged journalists in our fourth estate are digging into every single day? How are people not in jail for this? What the actual fuck? Not sorry for the strong language. Some of the deaths that were considered unrelated were due to heart attacks, strokes, and other cardiovascular conditions. That is very interesting, since the CDC, the FDA, and the EMA have now officially determined that myocarditis and pericarditis are in fact linked to the Pfizer COVID vaccine, so at least some of those deaths probably were related to the vaccine. But they wanted the vax out, deaths be damned. The purpose of a system is what it does. My belief is this is all intentional. They knew it was harmful, or at least they knew they had no way of knowing it was safe, and they vaccinated the control group to make sure the data could never prove it. Do you really believe that people who did this are concerned for your health? Lying data, lying stories. They pulled so many tricks with the data that most people weren't aware of, and that the media never reported on because they too are paid by the medical cartel. I've seen numbers saying up to 30% of cable news ad revenue comes from Big Pharma. They know which side their bread is buttered on. They're not impartial. It's well documented that between the first and second shot of a 2-shot COVID quote-unquote vaccine, your immunity goes down for a week or two before going up. That means that after your first shot, you're more likely to get COVID. To make the vaccines look better, they then lumped case stats for people who had received just one shot together with people who'd gotten no shots, thus artificially inflating the numbers for unvaccinated and lowering the numbers for vaccinated. They also counted deaths with COVID rather than deaths from COVID, and incentivized hospitals to inflate numbers for hospitalizations and deaths from COVID to make the disease seem more dangerous than it was, which they then used to scare us, which they then used to scare all of us into accepting cruel lockdowns. Why were they so aggressive in censoring dissenting data and opinions on COVID and vaccines? Why did they lie about where COVID came from, pretending like it came from a bat market when Fauci and others knew from the start that it came from the Wuhan lab? I'm pretty sure that's documented now after the Foya lady story broke in August 2024. If we had a functioning media, it wouldn't take independent citizens to get there. But we don't. Why? So many questions. Why did COVID happen? Why did they lie about it? Why did they let so many people die unnecessarily? Why did they push the vaccines so hard? What really happened with COVID? To me, the inevitable conclusion is that the blob wanted a pandemic. They wanted lots of people to get sick and die, and they wanted to force the vaccine on as many people as possible. Was it just for profit? I don't think so. The total revenue from COVID vaccines is quote unquote only about $150 billion. Yes, that's a lot of money for you and me, but given that they printed trillions of dollars during the same period, it's not that much money in the big scheme of things. So what was it? I don't know. I wish we had a media that would dig into this, but we don't. Here's my best misconception to date. I'm not saying it's the truth. It's just the narrative that best fits the fact that I've seen. I wish our media would do an honest validation of each and every claim here. I want to know the truth. Every president we've had since JFK has been effectively chosen by the blob, save for two: Nixon, who they got rid of by framing him for Watergate, and Donald Trump. Trump wasn't supposed to win, but he did. The blob sprung into action with warrantless wiretapping on his campaign, the Steele dossier, framing Michael Flynn, the Mueller investigation, and much more. As the 2020 election was approaching, Trump looked unstoppable. The economy was great. Unemployment was way down, no new wars. Despite the consistent negative media coverage, re-election looked almost certain. Sidebar here, no new wars, I think is the key thing, right? They want wars. That's it. They want wars. Like, that's the number one thing they want. Keep going. So they decided to release COVID. I cannot prove it was released or that it was released for this reason, but that's my belief. The timing is just too convenient. They've been working on this virus for years through their illegal gain-of-function research in Wuhan in partnership with the CCP, and they had it ready to go. They prepared the media by running the infamous Event 201 at Johns Hopkins, which, as I understand it, was all about controlling the public narrative and getting people to accept harsh remedies, not about how to actually make people, not die. I could be wrong. I didn't watch the whole thing. This is what I've heard, and I think a lot of people believe this, whether it's true or not. Releasing the virus accomplished many things at once for a lot of powerful people, not just getting rid of Trump. Fauci and Birx, who were no fans of Trump, effectively took over essential parts of the government for a while. They greatly blew up the fear of COVID by manipulating the numbers, as we've seen. They made sure no effective treatment was allowed until the vaccines could be launched, cruelly allowing many to die needlessly and alone. This exaggerated fear of COVID was used as an excuse to change voting laws across the country, particularly in favor of mass mail-in ballots, which would make it easier to steal the election. The COVID lies, and by the way, that's a fact. It's a fact that mass mail-in ballots makes it easier to steal an election. It just does. The COVID lies were used as an excuse to put most people under house arrest using the boil a frog strategy of incremental steps. 15 days to slow the spread, which Deborah Birx has now shared in her book. Silent Invasion was an intentional lie to get people on board with the idea of longer lockdowns, something they'd never accept outright. The lockdowns also facilitated the greatest transfer of wealth probably in history. Small businesses were forced to close, trillions of dollars were printed, stock prices went through the roof, and FAANG, which is Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google, Walmart and other big corporations rolled in cash. Most of the stimmy money, that's cute for cutesy for stimulus money, ended up going straight to those companies. Gyms had to stay closed though, because health. Look, lockdowns destroyed Trump's great economy, which allowed the media and Democrat narrative to be about how bad the economy was at the end of his term. So yes, I believe COVID was intentionally released to the world to achieve a number of objectives, not least of which was to make sure Trump did not get reelected. It was just too convenient for too many people and institutions, so they all played along. And millions of lives were destroyed in the process because you are never their concern. If you haven't read RFK Jr.'s book, The Real Anthony Fauci, do yourself and everyone a favor and read it. It's dense, but so eye-opening and with lots and lots of footnotes. I've read it twice. Toxic food. Okay, enough COVID. Let's talk food. In his excellent book, The Dorito Effect, Mark Schatzker documents how our natural cravings are carefully calibrated over thousands of years to make us eat the food that contains the exact micronutrients that our body needs. I just want to see how much I have left here. All right, 214 it says. Yeah, so we got a few more pages and then we're good. All right, cool. Sounds good. Quote, a strawberry contains vitamin C, vitamin E, vitamin B6, biotin, folate, niacin, pantothenic acid, riboflavin, thiamine, calcium, potassium, magnesium, phosphorus, copper, boron, iron, iodine, manganese, molybdenum, zinc, omega-3s, histidine, isoleucine, leucine, phenylalanine, threonine, tryptophan, valine, and fiber, along with anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 known plant secondary compounds, including ellagic acid, lutein, zeaxanthin, and beta-carotene, and 300 or so aromatic compounds, about 80 of which we can pin down. End of quote. Your body craves strawberries because it knows that the strawberry has the exact micronutrient that you're deficient in. But when we fuck with artificial flavors, we fuck with the body's ability to tell us and get what it really needs. If your body needs a specific nutrient from strawberries and you feed it a garbage, fat-free, sugar-laden, quote-unquote, strawberry yogurt that's never been within a 10-mile radius of an actual strawberry, the flavor is now so realistic that your body thinks it's getting a strawberry with all the nutrients that involves. When the nutrients don't arrive, it'll crave more and more, which makes us overeat and fat. It's no accident that Americans are It's no accident that Americans are fatter and sicker than ever before. We're fed literal garbage, and they have the audacity to call it food. Vani Hari, aka the Food Babe, has been documenting this for years. There's thousands of toxic chemicals that are known to make people sick that are banned in Europe, yet allowed in the US. And the same exact product from the same exact producer the same exact product from the same exact producer will have a nice clean list of ingredients in Europe and the same exact product from the same exact producer will have a nice clean list of ingredients in Europe and a litany of toxic chemicals in the US. What the hell? How are we putting up with this? We need to wake up. If this isn't proof that your politicians and government officials and leaders of industry and media do not give a damn about you at all, what proof would you need to see? We need to stop fighting each other and realize that our neighbors, our uncles, and our coworkers are not our enemies. They're our allies, and together we have the power to create the world we want to live in. You sensing a theme here? The secret to a healthy diet is simple. In the words of Michael Pollan, Eat food, not too much, mostly plants. Avoid edible food-like substances. Bottom line here is that our current system is designed to make and keep you sick. Health is your responsibility, and your body knows how to heal itself, given the right conditions. Reject the notion of socialized or taxpayer-funded medical care. It is nothing more than a blob scam to steal your money and your health. I dare anyone to prove me wrong. I just don't see how you can make a corrupt, broken system better by forcing people to pay into it with a threat of violence. How? Seriously. All right, end of chapter. That's it for today. Chapter on being healthy. Appreciate you guys very much. And some other day, probably tomorrow, we're going to do the chapter on how to be prosperous. How do people actually become prosperous, and what that means for how we create the world we want to live in. All right, so that would be page 214 out of 304 or something. So there we go. All right. Love you guys. I'll see you next time. Be well.